Hello, Scallydandlers. It's Alfred here, who you may recognise from various guest appearances on this channel, and I'm sort of projecting that to the logical extreme by doing a guest video that doesn't even feature Roz, because it's something that I thought was interesting and bookish to talk about to you people. So, a while ago, whilst reading articles about how to be good at running tabletop games, which is something that I care about, I came across an article that it's a bit melodramatic to say it changed the way I think about the world, but it changed the way I think about certain aspects of the world, mostly fun and leisure activities. It was basically based on this academic paper that defines, as part of its project, these 8 aesthetics of play, which then this article reframed as 8 kinds of fun. So it defined them, and then it went on to talk about how people value different aesthetics, different amounts, and in different situations. There's a lot of difference there, but the point was that as the person running a game, you'd have to be aware of what kinds of fun your players valued and how to deliver the kinds of fun to your players that they would want in their game. And yes, this was kind of a very cool, powerful idea for me. And now when I'm playing games or partaking in leisure activities, I have a little think about what type of fun am I getting out of this? Why? How well is this activity delivering on that type of fun? So that's by way of an introduction. And obviously, I read a lot of books for fun. But what kinds of fun? What kinds of fun do books do well? So I'm going to go through all 8 of these aesthetics of play and talk about how I could see them applying or not applying or partially applying to reading and the culture that exists around reading and books. So our first category of fun, sorry, I've got my notes here so that I could see me looking and occasionally scrolling through them, is sensory fun. That's the idea that some kinds of sensations are nice or good or enjoyable or fun. Now, that's obviously an incredibly broad category. It's covering everything from, the nice background music, the nice background music and something being engrossing to you, or when you're playing a board game, it's much nicer to play one with like really weighty, heavy playing pieces rather than just like bits of cardboard. It's also, if you're riding a motorcycle and get an incredible adrenaline kick or what have you, that's all within that wheelhouse. Now, those are quite splashy, tangible examples. In books, we still see this kind of aesthetic, but it's much more mellow. It's when people talk about like a new book smell or the smell of an old library, or when you care about the a weighty paper like hardback in your hands, or the beautiful illustrations in a special edition. It's probably why a lot of audiobooks are going to be putting time and effort into getting the best possible readers, or even in some cases putting in sound effects. It's also, to my mind, why paper's always going to have a sort of advantage over an e-reader, even as it's also the reason why e-reader manufacturers are going to put in a lot of effort into improving the look and feel and use experience of those e-readers in the hand. So yeah, it's not big. Sensation fun is not big and splashy in the realm of books, but it's there and it's important and it's going to affect how you read. The next aesthetic is generally called fantasy, but obviously that's got quite a specific meaning in terms of books and literature. So the other names that you could use that might be more useful would be escapism or immersion. So this, at its core, is the joy of losing yourself, of pretending for a while to be someone or somewhere else. This is a type of fun that's very important to me, and I think it's a type of fun that books deliver on well. In fact, I suspect that if you asked a large number of readers what the most fun thing about reading was, some paraphrased version of that losing yourself, being somewhere or someone else sentence is going to make up a big chunk of the results. What's interesting is that obviously that's not the only kind of fun that books deliver, but yeah. The next aesthetic is narrative, or the fun of like a well-told story, of a good plot playing itself out. Now, despite what some people in the comments on previous videos have been think, I'm not an expert on books or literature. I don't have a strong background in that, so I don't necessarily feel well qualified to talk about what makes a plot great or enjoyable. What I would say is that I think that there's this interesting tension in this type of fun between unexpectedness and expectedness. Like, part of what makes a plot nice is it's following that beginning, middle, end kind of structure that's familiar to you. But if it's too predictable, that is then going to make it boring or unenjoyable. In the sort of world of the tabletop game, you can see an alternative version of that tension where Like when you're running the game, you need to give the players enough choice that they feel like they're having real effects on what happens, while still creating enough structure that the game doesn't feel lost and empty and without any sort of plot or forward progress. So our fourth kind of fun is challenge fun, essentially. That's the fun, basically, of feeling clever or powerful or smart for successfully overcoming difficulty, for testing yourself and winning, or failing but in a way that feels like growth. So this is like not as obviously book related as narrative and fantasy fun, but it's still very prevalent. Right? If you don't get this kind of fun, then a book with really difficult prose or a weird writing style, it's going to feel like you're enjoying the story or the characters despite that. But if you do get challenge fun, then that additional nut to crack becomes part of what makes that book wonderful, what makes you love it. I think this is also where we see like reading challenges kind of come in, that sort of sense of like, yeah, I'm going to read these books in this order, or this many books this quickly, or all of that sort of idea to test and push yourself kind of comes into that wheelhouse, essentially. Yes. So the next aesthetic, next contender is fellowship, which is that essentially sometimes it's fun to interact with other human beings. Obviously, reading is broadly a solitary activity. You're not really doing it in a team or chatting with people whilst you're doing it. So you might think that fellowship fun isn't present in reading, but I think that's quite a surface level interpretation. Obviously, most people that like books also like to talk to people about books they like. The existence of BookTube as a phenomenon is probably a strong example of that, as is, reading groups and book circles and all these other presentations of that human urge to communicate and engage with other humans as it relates to reading. I think that in many ways that you see these things more formally defined around reading because it's absent in the core act, so people feel the need to construct structures that allow them to do it. Up next, we've got discovery fun, which is the fun of learning, of finding things out, the thrill of the, oh, now I get it moment. Again, this is one of the kinds of fun that is most important to me, and it's another one that books do really well. I would say it's important to realize that it's not just like actual learning that is covered in discovery fun. Like, obviously, there's no real intellectual value to working out a cool trick that you can do within a magic system in a fantasy book, but it is still sort of triggering that discovery fun pathway, I would say. Also, that kind of self-discovery kind of also slots into here to an extent, although also in a subsequent one. So like if you see a character face a moral quandary and you're upset because they do something that is different to you and that makes you realize something else about yourself, that's still playing in that sort of space of discovery. So our penultimate aesthetic is expression, which is the fun of creating things, especially creating things in a way that says something to the world about you and who you are and what you believe and so on. So as with fellowship, this is not really that present in the actual act of reading. When I'm reading a book, I don't have the opportunity to creatively express myself in that unless I've got a pen and I'm like writing notes and highlighting the bits that I think are really good. But obviously, as with that fellowship fun, it is very present in the communities and spaces that we create around books. And I think that you can see like everything from how you'd create the books that are on display, like you put them, like are they in like by color or by author, or which ones are you choosing to talk about? Is that making a comment about your identity? Like if you take a system of identity that exists in a book you like and try and apply it to yourself, how many of us have done quizzes about which Order of the Knights Radiant we're in, or it's also when people create fan art or fan fiction or videos where we share our thoughts and feelings about books. These are all expressions of the expression fun. There I go again with my wording. Right, so our last aesthetic is submission, which I don't know if that's the best. It's not like all the other ones, the name is like really quite strongly linked. But this is basically the head empty, no thoughts kind of fun. It's a task or activity that you can lose yourself in without having to require any effort or focus. It's just a thing to eat time without being bored. But I know that I used losing yourself in the description of immersion escapism earlier, but that's just a kind of language trick. They're quite different. Like, to steal an example from another kind of hobby, as it were, when I'm playing some trashy mobile game, I'm not losing myself in the deep characters and world of Candy Crush. I'm losing myself in a task that is just exciting enough to not bore me without requiring any real effort or input on my part. And sometimes that's, you know, all that you want or all that you need. And it's a thing that, again, is not as strongly prevalent in books in some of the other types, but it is a thing that books can deliver for people in the right circumstances. Especially, I think, your sort of cheap page, low effort page turnery books, or those rereads that you come back to again and again like a warm blanket, which I know something I've discussed in other videos. I think they're all playing into that abnegation, submission, flavour, and aesthetic. So that is the 8 kinds of fun. Which of these matter most to you when you read? What about in your other hobbies? Did you enjoy this video? Should I hijack Roz's channel more often? Did I make you think critically about the activities that you enjoy? If people do like this and want me to do more, then next time maybe I'll talk about fan fiction, or, you know, why that's weird but why I enjoy it, or really long fantasy series and why they're weird and why I enjoy them, or maybe I'll have some other idea. In any case, have a lovely day and enjoy reading. Goodbye.